Hey y'all. Alright, so today we have a Shimano Spheros 12,000 FA that we're going to work on. And what I'm about to do, I typically do before I start the video. But I'm showing you how I go through checking these reels out preliminarily before I get started on them. Obviously, first I'll crank it and just kind of feel how it feels. Feels okay. Feels a little bit sluggish, but nothing terrible. Then I'm just going to work my way down from the top just to the bottom. I'm going to test this out, the spool, and the drag, and in the process I'll hear to see if the clicker is working or not, which it is. Then I'm going to crank this on a little bit to see if there's any stickiness to the drag, and I don't feel any. Next I'll go to the bail, see if that flips properly, and it doesn't. I know the spring works because it's still kicking back, so it's just a matter of these pivot points here that's causing the issue. Then I'll check the line roller, and that's not moving. Let me check the schematic on this to see if there's a bearing inside here or if it's just a bushing. So it's a bearing inside here. So I was going to use a little trick that I have that I use with line to help free this up if it's just a bushing with some oil and line. That's not going to work, so I probably won't show this on camera, to be honest with you, because there's probably going to be a little bit of work involved in this. So if you wanted to see how to break down this double-footed line roller and just kind of put it back together, you can check the link up here. And let's just move on to the rest of the reel. That's pretty much all I'll be checking on this reel, just based on the crank it felt okay. I'll check that lever, of course, and that actually works fine, which is somewhat surprising, but always good. And I think that's about it. There's nothing else really to... I don't know what this is. I don't think it's for any kind of plate. Unless the wrong screw is put inside there, which quite possibly could be. Could have had a service before, did it himself, and put the wrong screw up here. That, I'm sure that happens. So, anyhow, so I'm gonna pause the video for a sec because I need to remove the line, and then I'm gonna come back to you guys. Before I do that, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and that like button, and be sure to tell your friends about the channel. And I will see you guys in a bit after I remove the line, and then we're going to start breaking this stuff down. Okay, so I took the line off, and I keep wanting to mention this to you guys, and I don't. If you wanted like a simple at-home tool that you could use to remove your line or save you some time removing line from all your reels, check out this link up here. It's a really cool thing. Yeah, it's homemade, so it may not last forever, but I'm sure you can work your own tweaks on it to make it perform better or last longer. But it does a trick, and it's pretty cheap and easy to do. Anyhow, so I removed the spool by unscrewing this drag cap here, and I'm just going to unscrew these screws to get to the drag washers under here. Whenever I do these things on older reels, well, pretty much all reels, I'd be careful when I'm unscrewing these things, just to get a feel for how tight they might be, because I certainly don't want to snap a screw off inside one of these things. There's nothing worse than doing that. Well, I'm sure there are worse things, but when it comes to a reel, I guess, I don't know, that could be one of the worst things you can do. This was the one that I had an issue with right here. Felt kind of tight, which is why I just used the oil. People ask all the time what I use for these reels. So the oil that I use, or the penetrating oil that I use, is Corrosion X. The oil that I use for the bearings and other stuff on the reel is Relax, and I use pan grease for the gears and some other stuff inside there. Alright, so let's just pull these out. We know they're going to be the same size. They only make sense. And we're just going to pop this up hopefully, if we're lucky. And if we're not lucky, we're going to be working at it. I can see some rusty stuff around there already. And again, this video is not going to be a cleaning sort of thing. I'm just kind of showing you how to take stuff off, put them back apart, or put them back together, and that's basically how we're going to do this video. Hello. That is nice. Alright, so now we get to this point. These screws don't need to be removed to get the drag out, but I did spray them down because they look pretty junky in there, and I'm probably going to try to loosen these up to make sure they're not frozen or stuck inside there. But what I want to show you is just the drag still comes out like this, so you don't have to worry about those screws there. And I'm going to show you the bottom side of this. There's the line keeper, which is broken off here, so I'm sure he doesn't use it, but if you wanted to change that out, you can pull that spring or that wire there back against the post here, or from the post, and to put it back in, or to replace it by getting a new line keeper. Same thing in reverse. To get this click tongue off of there, you got to push forward a little bit and up to get it off of that post, and remove that cap right there. I'm not going to do that because if you remove the cap, sometimes it loosens it up and you can't put that back on. You have to use a new one, and it works fine, so I don't want to do that. Anyhow, so I'm going to get this stuff all cleaned up. I'll work on this part, and I'll come back to you and show you something else. Okay, so I cleaned that up and put some new drag washers in there, and just kind of greased before I did all that stuff. So we're just going to grease here. And I'm still going to grease around here even though it's not usable in this form. If you want to know how the stack goes, it's going to be drag washer or fiber or whatever this is, drag washer, a metal round drag washer on top of that, then another drag washer there, the metal aired washer on top of this one, final drag washer, and then the final round drag washer on top of that, on that stack. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump to the reel. I'm going to pop the handle off by unscrewing it. And to get this off, we're going to have to remove the rotor. I think, yeah, it looks like we do. So let's go and get the rotor off. I pull that straight up. Then we're just going to unscrew this. And then pull that nut off so we can pull the rotor up. I know this reel hasn't been used in a long time because this is going to be kind of gross, I think, but I found I should have left it when I saw it. A roach pod, like eggs inside of here somewhere. So I kind of pulled it out so you guys didn't see it, but I'm still mentioning it anyhow, so should have just left it there. Anyhow, so we pull this stuff off, and this nut we're going to remove. It's right to remove, or clockwise to back it off. What you saw me do there was just test it out to see if it was left or counterclockwise to back off, or right. So I gently went this way first, and that didn't work, so then I went that way. Ding, ding, that way, like that. Alright, pull that off. I'm going to save this. So in theory, if you're breaking on a reel, the first piece to go on is the last piece to go back on, right? I'm sorry, the first piece to come off is the last piece to go back on. So if you take this off, this is the last piece you work on, and you do this stuff before you do this. On a lot of reels, you have to do the rotor first because you need to get the rotor on and secure it before you can put the gears in. I don't know why I even said it, but that's just some words of wisdom. I don't know. Anyway, so let's open this up and we're gonna verify to see if that screw is one of the longer ones and that's all it was that happened there, or if they lost a screw and needed to replace it, or whatever else happened. I just think they put the wrong screw in, and I'm sure I've done it myself before, so we all make mistakes sometimes, but we're gonna find out. Let me check the schematic on this really quickly. I think there's only 2 short screws and 2 long screws. That felt pretty short. I don't know. Let's find out. Yep, so these 2 here should be the shorter screws, is what it looks like. No, wrong. These two screws should be the shorter, and these 2 should be the longer screws. So let's see, we have 2 long ones there. And that's a short one. And that's a short one. So maybe it's just set that way, I don't know. I don't recall ever seeing it. That's the only reason I'm even bringing it up. But again, 2 short screws go here and 2 long screws go here. Now we can just pull that off. Yep, I think. Let's hope. Just kind of rocking this. I'm gonna pause it, double check the schematic on this just to make sure there's not something I'm missing, and I don't think there is, but I can get this off and then come back to you guys. Alright, I'll see you guys in a bit. Alright, so this is one of those classic scenarios where you get inside your head and you miss the obvious. So we have a rotor brake on here that we have to remove first. Silly me. So we're gonna pop that off. And that's why I was getting stuck. So I'm gonna get that off. Use my flathead instead. And you want to be careful with these. You don't want to stretch them too much, but you gotta get it up. So just kind of work it around like that. And then it pops through that trip bumper right there. And then you can just pull it up. Alright, so now we can just pull this off. And it looks pretty good inside, it's not so bad, so that's good. So I'm just going to take this stuff out and clean this up. There's not a whole lot going on here that I need to do. So I'm going to clean this up, come back to you and just kind of show you how to grease it. I'm not even going to take out the worm. Maybe I should. Well, let me clean this up first. And if I decide to take out the worm gear, I'll take it out so you guys can see how it looks. Again, I may not do it because it just doesn't really need it. Alright, I'll see you guys in a bit when this is all cleaned up. And we're going to pop this out of here, and I guess I'll show you this part when I come back. Okay, so I did take this all out and clean it up, put it back together. I'm going to take it apart and show you how to put it back in, or how to remove it, then how to put it back in. I'm going to remove that screw there first. Then this just comes up and pulls out like that. Now we can pop the rod out. undo this screw here. Be a little careful with this one. I'm gonna kind of keep these a little separate. Now we can lift this up and pull the pawl out. There's a washer under there, so just be aware of that. And let's pull this pawl out of there. It sits in that sleeve right there. You can remove it or take it out of there. I'm going to pull this off, this bushing right here, and now all we're going to do is just pull it down, and it should come out. Raise that up so we can get it up. Pull it just like that. Then you have this gear that's in there, and this piece right there. For this piece, there's another washer, a small washer that's going to sit on top of it, but I won't do that until the end. So I have to make a note so I don't forget it. The schematic said there was a washer under here or on here, but I didn't find one on this one, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So how do we put it back in? I'm going to grease. Oh, before I do that, I'm sorry. So remember I said when I was cranking this reel when we were testing out initially that it felt a little sluggish. I assumed that it probably would be because of the grease when I opened it up, but I saw that these, after I cleaned these gears off, this screw and this screw was raised up, and they shouldn't be that way. It gives it a little bit of play. So I'm going to screw those back in. And then I'm going to just check these other ones as yeah, these are all loose. All these screws are loose. None of them should be loose. So we're just going to tighten them back down. Now we're just going to grease all these things up. I'm going to kind of fast forward through this part because I don't want to keep stopping and starting again. But I'm putting a light amount of grease on every part that you see me do. I'm not speeding it up. You guys might want to see this stuff, so I'm gonna grease the back of this when we put it in. I'm gonna do the same for this. Slide amount of grease all over it, inside those holes. Then after I do this part, I think I just stop the camera and just grab some water or something. So for the pawl, I'm sorry, for the worm gear, this looks like a bit much. We're gonna put just a light amount of grease on there. Because it doesn't need a whole lot. Hit this gear with a little bit of grease. And I'm gonna oil this bearing. Add a little bit of grease there and some here as well. Where's my washer? I keep losing him. Anyhow, so let's move on. I'm gonna hit here, these gears. I was looking for that washer, sorry. They have a knack of disappearing, so you gotta be careful with them. Inside here as well. This is where the bearing sits. And we certainly don't want to get frozen inside there. So we'll do that. And I am going to pause the camera because I want to make sure I find that washer that goes on top of this here. Alright, so we found the washer. I'm going to finish this stuff up. Then let's go ahead and get this thing oiled here. Now for this rod, I'm going to add just a little bit of grease on that. Did I take that one out? Oh, sorry, I didn't. There's another bushing inside here. That's the rod goes through. When I set this back in place, I want to put this inside first and then slide the rod through it. There's a hole here for you to be able to do it through. It's not that easy. So I'm just going to do it the other way. So let's just get started on putting it back together. Let's do the bushing first so you can see this. This bushing has two little notches on the end of it. There's two corresponding grooves inside that side case there. So when you put this in, you want to make sure that it's sitting in the grooves. So you just gently turn this as you push down to where it snaps in place. It just dropped in place for me right there. So now that's set. So let's do this part first. The notch on this one, or the tab, is going to sit towards the top or facing up like that. So I'm just putting it over the hole somewhere, and then I'm going to just play with it to get it inside. And then I'm going to set it down, make sure it goes inside that notch, and you can tell it goes inside the notch because it actually goes in deeper than it should. So that's good. Now we can take this gear, and the way that you're going to have it is that raised portion is going to be facing up. I'm going to drop it in there, not there, drop it in there, some in that area. Then we're going to take our worm gear, and we're going to put that on like so. Now I have tried to put this on while I'm doing this, and it actually makes the most sense. Sometimes it falls off, you gotta do it all over again. Anyhow, so I'm just kind of holding this in place, and I'm gonna stick that through. Yeah, there it goes. Come on back. Let's start that over. The notch on this one, or the tab on this one, is going to be facing down. There's a corresponding notch in the case here, but it's all the way at the bottom, so it'll be facing straight down. Let's get this gear back in. let's move that over. And I'm going to be trying to do this so you guys can see it. I'm turning that tab towards the bottom. It may not be exactly on the bottom at this point, but we want to kind of get it towards that. Now I'm going to move this gear over the worm gear and turn it until I find that groove so that I can drop into place like that. And we want to make sure that's seated on the worm gear, which is not yet. There we go. We just had it. Yep, okay. So now I'm going to turn like this and turn that tab to where we get it to the bottom. And it kind of rides inside the channel right there. Oh, went a little too far, so now we just got to back it up. That's right around there. And I can see it's in the channel, so that's good. Now let's go ahead and move this down a little bit. And we're going to take our rod and stick that through. Just got it through the hole that's on the block there. And then just get that set. So at this point everything is set. So what we can do is take this bar and put it over there like that. I went too far. Alright, so like that. And now we can screw that in place with this. And you can certainly put this in. There's a tab on this that's going to fit in a notch up there as well. I don't know if you need to or not at this point, but we'll stick it in there so we just have it there. Now we got to take our washer, our pawl, and I'm going to add a little bit of grease on this as well. And that's it. Then we're going to drop this in place and then find where the pawl is set onto the worm gear. So I'm holding onto the top here and onto the pawl, and I'm going to turn this gear until I feel that pawl moving freely along the worm gear, which it is right now. So now we can take our washer, stick that on there over the pawl, and then set this down and screw it in. Alright, so now I'm going to grease in that hole there where one of the pinion bearings are going to sit, because I didn't do it earlier. I'm going to grease inside that hole and that bushing there. And I'm going to grease in here where the upper pinion bearing is going to sit. A little bit over here as well. Alright, so let's get to the pinion and the anti-reverse. Just going to check these things out. There's no washers in these things. That feels good. I'm going to oil it. just gonna work that in a little bit. And the same for this one. Alright, so let's go ahead and grease this pinion gear up. And I like to grease the entire thing just to have some level of protection on it. But you certainly don't need to grease the entire thing. You can grease just the bottom half of this pinion gear because that's all it's going to be interacting with the main gear. I'm going to stick our first bearing on here. Let's get this out of the way. That's the main gear bearing. Now we can stick that inside the housing, like so. Now we can take our larger bearing and stick that inside there like that. And now we can check our anti-reverse clutch. See how that looks. And it looks pretty good. Yeah, looks good. So there's not much we're going to do here. Just a little bit of cleaning out. Then we're going to set that back in place. Alright, so that little notch right there is going to fit over, when we set this back in place, the notch is going to fit over that tab right there. I'm going to take my little metal washer that I took off earlier, put that back on there. And then we're also going to add this washer for that portion right there, just like that. And now I'm going to take, I didn't clean this part off, and take that clutch washer and put it on, and then we're going to get everything kind of closed up on there. Alright, so again, the notched end in there is going to fit over that tab. And if you also needed a guide, there's two notches or two tabs on this, on the bottom of this AR clutch that fits in that hole there and that hole there. So this kind of helps you line things up. And that feels like it's set in place. So I'm going to start screwing these things in. Whenever you screw these things down, you don't want to screw them in too tight, because you're not trying to compress the case here. You're simply trying to secure it. And also, when you're screwing these screws in place, if it's not going in smooth like that, back it out a little bit and start over, because you don't want to have you don't want to re-thread the inside of that. Alright, so that's it for this. We're going to get this closed up in a sec. I'm going to stick that through in a sec. I want to double check to make sure there's nothing that I'm missing here. I think we're good. Alright, so I'm going to add a little bit of grease to the shaft here where it's going to sit inside that block. I'm not going to add any there. Some up here. I'm leaving that part alone. And let's just stick that through. The flat part faces up. I'm going to add some more grease here where those screws are going to go. And then secure it with these two screws. Alright, so where's our little bumper? I gotta take this back off for you guys. Sorry about that. Oh, there it is right there. Nope, I don't have to take it off. I'm lying to you. Okay, we're good. All right, so what was I looking for before? I forgot. Oh yeah, this piece. This piece is going to go back on. It's going to fit over here and over the bottom part of here as well. You'll notice that there's 3 tabs on this. There's 1, 2, 3, and on this side there's no tabs at all. So clearly you're going to be sitting it to look like that when you put it back in. The reason I say that is because these tabs are curved. You may be confused as to what side goes where. Just follow the pattern. Let's stick this in. Let me grease the back of this. Greasing around where that bearing would sit. Grease inside the bearing as well. I'm just going to stick that in inside there like that. Now I can take our shims and just stick those over there. And I think we're going to close this up. I don't think there's anything else we need to do. Well, for good measure, let's go ahead and, this is plasticky. Nope, we're not going to do it. Then just set it over like that. Now we can certainly lock this up and be good to go. Again, it's the 2 short screws going on this side, on this end over here. One here and one here. And then the 2 longer screws go on this side. I forgot to oil this thing, so I'm going to do it from underneath the anti-reverse lever. So I'm going to add a little bit of oil inside here. And there. Just kind of work that in. And I'm going to put this rotor brake on here. Now after I do that, I'm going to grease that bumper right there. I'll start over here on this end. Get this part down first, because the hardest part to get down will be this part where the bumper is. So we got to kind of work that in and down. And it's still never easy. I don't say never easy, but I don't like doing it. Alright, so it just looks like that. And you want to make sure that entire brake is inside that channel that it's supposed to be sitting in. And that looks good. And I'm just going to add some grease here. That's it for that. The rotor again, I wasn't going to do, I'm not going to do the line roller part. If you look at the rotor portion of this video, then you can see how to break this all down and refurbish this if there's a lot of corrosion in this in these pivot points. But for this video, I'm not going to do it. But I'm going to come back to you afterwards. I think this was the main part, and just show you that everything works. This, we're just going to add some oil here and some oil there, maybe a little bit there, and kind of work that in. And I'm gonna clean this up a little bit too. All right, so I'm gonna come back to you guys in a sec when this is all cleaned up and good to go, just to verify that it's working properly. And check out the other videos that I pointed out earlier in this video if you want to see some of those things.